I've spent the last few years working for one of the largest shockwave clinics in North America, and I've learned a thing or two about the power and untapped potential of regenerative medicine. But the march towards a future where sickness is healed from its root cause is challenged by the influence of big pharma and their deep pockets. So now we're forced to answer questions like, how do we get rid of joint pain, take back our performance in the bedroom, and heal diseases from the inside out without band-aid medications or negative side effects? This show will give you the answers. Follow along as I interview the world's top experts and doctors and how they transformed their lives and their patients' lives using the newest advances in biotechnology. I'm your host, Austin James Wolf, and you're listening to Modern Biotech Radio. Hey, what's going on, Modern Biotech Pioneers? So today I'm visited by Scott McKay. He helps men live their best lives, and today we're going to talk about what it really means to be a man and how to be the best person you can be. So how's it going, Scott? Thanks for joining.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, for sure. So give our listeners a little bit of what you do, what you specialize in.
Oh, well, we've been helping both men and women get better at interacting with the other gender and ultimately finding love for over 15 years now. And I've always been thrilled at the caliber of guys who come to me, guys like Navy SEALs, military officers, doctors, famous people, even like mayors of cities you've heard of, and regular guys too. Men of character who want to go from good to great and who really are sick of not just getting the kind of woman who ends up with them, but really becoming a chooser and getting the kind of relationship they've always wanted with the right woman for them.
Right. One question that pops into my mind is, what sort of common trait do all of these men have in common?
Most of these men have high character. They want to leave the world a better place. They want to do the right thing. They have a core belief system that allows them to do the right thing when nobody else is looking. Their yes is yes. They make promises and keep them. They're also men who believe that masculinity is meant to be virtuous, despite what the media may say in the opposite direction. Right. They love women. They respect women. And they also deeply respect the power of femininity.
Yeah.
And they want to be heroes.
Right. So let's say I'm a guy, I just got out of a bad relationship. It's been a couple months. I'm ready to jump back into the dating game.
Yeah.
And I come to you for help. What would you do to help me?
Well, the first thing we do is let you chime in on where you are and where you want to be. Okay. Because the last thing we want to do is take you through a program that's kind of a prepackaged, prefab thing and it not be right for you.
Right.
And that means that we give you kind of a questionnaire that helps you really get in touch with where you are right now, where you want to be. And then we have a planning process that helps us put that strategy together to take you to where you want to be. And guys find that's really super exciting when they see that plan and can visualize it. Because sometimes when you start getting towards the end of it, it seems rather ambitious right now. But it's my job to see that light at the end of the tunnel and know that light is actually you, the guy who's going to walk through it and sense that and see big things in the bigger picture and have a greater vision for that guy, perhaps even than he has coming into it.
Right, right. Can you give me an example of what these guys go through? I know that everyone's plan is different and individual, but can you give me sort of a, I guess, generalized breakdown of what a guy will experience?
Well, there's lots of different things, lots of different situations guys are coming out of. Sometimes guys don't have a whole lot of experience with women, especially the right kind of women, and they want to really gain some mastery in terms of being attractive to women, understanding women, how to talk to women, how to make them feel safe and comfortable in your presence. A lot of other guys have kind of lost touch with what masculinity really represents. We know how to be macho, we know how to impress our buddies, but what is it that really turns women on?
Right.
And we focus on that sometimes. Sometimes guys are shy. Sometimes guys have come out of a relationship with someone who was really narcissistic or manipulative or really just not a nice person.
Yeah.
And yet they were manipulative enough that they left the guy thinking he was the bad guy.
Right.
And that really messes with you. And getting that fresh start and kind of untangling that bird's nest and realizing, hey, this isn't about all women being crazy or all women being one way or the other, but we're all individual human beings and we have to take each other as we come on a case-by-case basis. Those are some of the examples. Some guys struggle deeply with online dating and apps because it just seems like, how do I stand out from the crowd? How do I get this particular woman to notice me when 200 guys have swiped on her already today? The list goes on and on. Some guys come to us because they want to get out from under a dead-end job or from being a cubicle jockey and finding more purpose,
Right.
and doing what they were called to do, and really, someday leave the world a better place than they found it. Really tune in to what their purpose here is, get some ambition, gain some drive, and be location independent so that they can call their own shots and experience true freedom,
Right.
all those
Right.
things.
You're a very passionate guy. I love it. I love how expressive you are. Now, one thing I want to ask you is, what do you think it means to be a man? What do you think is masculinity?
Masculinity, first of all, let's backtrack just a little bit.
Okay.
I personally believe that masculinity and femininity are not social constructs. They're deeply archetypal, ingrained components of our human being.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Our soul, as it were. It's been that way for years. I've been to 110 countries, and everywhere I've been, women are women and men are men. It's like
Right.
an international language, not unlike mathematics.
Right.
So what is masculinity and femininity? I believe they are the basic catalyzing building blocks of sexual attraction.
Okay.
Masculinity polarizes femininity and
Right.
creates the sexual attraction that causes us to populate the earth and
Right.
continue and furthering the circle of life. So interestingly enough, the bigger vision of what created us, who created us, whatever your belief system is, it is what it is, right? It's something that was not created by us. It is such that masculinity and strength provides and protects and enables femininity
Mm-hmm.
to happen. And femininity, sometimes I talk to people who are rather hostile to this message of masculinity and femininity
Right.
being what I believe they are.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes women come from a perspective of it's time for men to stop being masculine, let women take over and be the masculine ones for a while.
Yeah.
And the dirty trick that gets played on society there is that if you portray masculinity as toxic, then not give it anything else to replace it with except backing off. That's not really turning masculinity into femininity. That's just kind of casting it out into a void.
Right.
So what happens is oftentimes women who are fed up with, maybe legitimately having been hurt by some masculine types in this world,
Right.
decide it's our turn to be masculine. We want to be the strong ones. We want to fight. We want to lead. We want to provide and protect. We want to bring them the bacon and fry it up in the pan. And I always tend to catch people who feel like that off guard. And, there's some men among them too. When I say I believe femininity is actually the higher calling, they're like, tell me more.
Right.
And see, I believe femininity represents everything we live for on weekends. Joy, happiness, fun, play, comfort.
Right.
All these wonderful things that femininity bring into the world. We as men are the providers, protectors, and enablers of that to happen.
Right.
And the beauty of it is we as men, when we do our freaking job as men in this regard, in the virtuous sense, we're the beneficiaries of those gifts.
Right.
It's fantastic. It's an archetypal hero's journey thing in life that we give everything we've got on the battlefield for the love of a great woman, to support our families, to do right, to be heroes. And the woman responds with the gratitude bestowed upon the man as that joy and comfort and rest and recharging our batteries as warriors. And, when it's explained like that, very few people ever talk about this in that context. But I've also noticed very few people argue with it. And the beauty of it is, when men and women understand this, and they really consider the gravitas of how we didn't create this, that it's archetypal within us, and has existed ubiquitously for eons, that's actually kind of nice. And it's fair to everybody, and it works. And the beauty of it also is women can celebrate it, men can celebrate it. And when you understand how the machine, if you will, operates, it's rather like learning to drive a manual transmission or ride a motorcycle with a clutch, because once you know how the clutch works, it's a lot easier to learn how to handle the machine. And I believe mastering the understanding of masculinity and femininity, which we've just given a glimpse into,
Right.
is understanding how a clutch works. And it just opens up a world of opportunity to do better with women if you're a man, and indeed understand how men work if you're a woman. And, you know, if you're familiar with Maslow's hierarchy, the very simple way to talk about it is, you know, you have needs that are in a pyramid structure. The baseline is oxygen. You know, once you get out from underneath the swimming pool, you can breathe again and take the concrete shoes off. You realize, hey, I'm hungry. I could use a hamburger. And then, you know, if people are shooting at you and you fear for your life, you got to get that taken care of. But once those basic sustenance needs are taken care of, which men provide, okay, we're the providers and the protectors. Then higher up that hierarchy are the self-actualization and the esteem and all the fun things that we always hope we can get to. And that's why femininity is the higher calling.
Right, right. Now, have you ever coached a man who was completely content with his femininity and didn't want to be masculine and wanted a woman who was masculine?
No.
Right.
And I mean, I'm not saying those guys don't exist.
Right.
Well, such an ultra easy answer. I just don't think they'd come to me.
Right. I was going to say,
I'm their huckleberry.
Yeah, I was going to say that men who are actively seeking a coach to help them out with this are probably masculine to begin with.
Well, I've had guys who, to kind of put some spin on what you're saying.
Okay.
I can illuminate it this way. I've had guys who came off very much just like neuter humans.
Right.
Who didn't understand the absolute visceral horsepower of sexuality as a man.
Right.
But invariably, here's the funny thing, Austin. Whenever I have guys who want to meet women online, I say, okay, and this is how I work with them one-on-one, you know, rather than just giving them a bunch of theories and saying, you know, have at it. I have them send me usernames and profiles of real actual women in their metropolitan area, and we write to them. I've been at this for 15 years. I've never had a guy send me anyone other than a feminine woman.
Right, right.
Have long hair, dresses, and fingernails, and are saying, "Oh my God," you know, they're cute little things they do, and they just seem sunny and happy and perky, and all about the fun and all about the party and all about, you know, being soft and comfortable. Mm-hmm. Invariably, even the guys who don't understand the power of the masculinity that they're missing out on, they're just kind of being Mr. Neuter, nice guy, you know.
Right.
Those guys, when you know the scales are off and their eyes are open, they're like, wow. And then they, of course, many times go out and their world's changed. Interestingly enough, if you look, I was just talking about this with someone very recently. If you go look at some of the Hollywood actors who women are just crazy for, it's not that they have such chiseled, handsome features. It's how they carry themselves and the confidence and the body language and the masculinity that exudes from them. I mean, think of Matthew McConaughey. He played a character who was dying of AIDS and made himself as physically hideous as he could for the movie.
Right.
And guess what? It worked. I mean, it went pretty well for him to do that. But women's love that guy. And, it's mostly because of his laid back, I got this handled, everything. Yeah, you know, all right.
Yeah, I was gonna say Ryan Gosling also has a very feminine face. He's got a lot of feminine features. The Notebook, and everybody.
He's a good-looking dude.
Yeah, I mean, he's very good-looking.
I think more in terms of guys like Mark Wahlberg, like Marky Mark, who's an average-looking dude. David Duchovny is average-looking dude, but in Californication, women just are like,
oh my God.
And you know, Mark Wahlberg is just so masculine, how he carries himself, you know, that women are just like, yeah, I want a piece of that. And it's a visceral feeling. Yeah. It's not, you're so handsome. It's kind of like how women love fireman calendars. Because they like the idea of a fireman rescuing them and being a hero and being this protector. It's just so manly, they want to just explode.
So how does a guy unleash his masculinity? Let's say he's lost it over the years.
Yeah.
Like maybe he's been in marriage for like 10 years and just starting to lose
withered.
It. Yeah. So how does he get it back?
Well, I think first of all, again, it's learning how the clutch works. Like we just talked about.
Yeah.
You know, once you realize, oh, okay, so it isn't that masculinity is all about buying her a new car.
Right.
It isn't all about just saying, yes, dear. and being Mr. Nice Guy and hoping she's okay with your passivity, and take her out on a date and going, where do you want to go? And having her just go, take me to the Walgreens so I can get tampons and then take me right back home. It's like, well, what did I do wrong? Right. Kind of to get to the visceral heart of this matter, Austin, what's going on is post-modernity, what I call the suburban sleepwalk, has insulated us from really having to do manly stuff as part of our daily routine.
What's the suburban sleepwalk?
Oh, the suburban sleepwalk is, we have in this nice, safe little neighborhood. Nothing bad ever happens to us. We can go to the grocery and buy our hamburgers.
Right.
We don't have to go hunting. We can leave our doors unlocked at night. We get into our car. My wife's new car doesn't need me anymore. I don't even have to back up. I can drive a truck with a trailer behind it. I can back up and get it right there with the trailer. I can drive that thing. It doesn't need me anymore.
Right.
Just put a button and it parks itself, parallel parking. I'm like, I like the fact that I know how to freaking parallel park.
Yeah.
We're getting the need to be masculine.
Right.
The need to be provider, the need to be a protector, the need to even have a job vis-a-vis the current crisis that's going on where the government's just sending people checks.
Right.
Guys are like, this is freaking great. I don't even have to move out of my parents' nest. My mommy can do my laundry. Yeah, I'll cook my dinner for the rest of my life. I could just sit here and watch life happen on TV, play video games, and lick the Cheeto dust off my fingers. Right. And then they wonder why women aren't attracted.
Right.
It's like, well, there's nothing to be attracted to. There's no visceral masculinity out there.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think I'm bad. Don't box, no karate, as the old R&B song says from the early 80s, right? I'm not a badass, okay?
Right.
So why would a Navy SEAL, I've had 3 Navy SEALs hire me for in-person coaching now. Why would they do that? Well, because I know how to make women feel that visceral attraction. And it's more than just being a badass.
Yeah.
How do I make a woman feel safe and comfortable in my presence? Several years ago, I had the incredible privilege to hang out with the Maasai guys in Kenya. And the Western world kind of goes, what a bunch of primitive guys.
Right.
They're looking at us going, what a bunch of wusses.
Right. Yeah.
You guys need to man up. These guys can use their arms and scare away lions from their children. I mean, this is visceral providing and protecting stuff. And the thing is, you feel more alive.
Yeah.
When you're doing these manly things. Like anytime we rescue a woman in a certain way, even if it's just getting a can of corn from a higher shelf than she can reach, we feel something. We feel not just vindicated, but validated. And I know that sounds almost like there must be something the heck wrong with your self-esteem, but something's got to validate us in life. And it's amazing. Right. It's that simple. Well, understanding how the clutch works helps us understand masculinity as women define it, which is what turns women on. And women are like, a lot of guys are like, I'm not going to let some chick define my masculinity. Well, you misunderstand masculinity, because if masculinity is the building block with femininity of sexual attraction, you darn Skippy better figure out how women define it.
Right.
And the good news is we as men get to define what's feminine and turns us on. Women are still pretty good at that because it's so visual, and it's still kind of A-okay to be a feminine woman in this society. You can be an empowered feminine woman. Like my daughter is a BMX racer and has been since age 5. So she's tough and gritty and has, can make decisions and mental toughness and all these wonderful, confident things that are not gender specific, by the way. Women aren't weaklings. But she also likes pink and purple and likes to giggle and likes to bring joy and comfort to stuff. We know it when we see it. We like it. And women are the same way. It's a feeling, not a decision. And your ability to provide and protect and enable that feminine nature to be freed up in a woman, a single mom, if you can take her on a 2-hour vacation and tell her you got everything handled when she's used to spinning all those plates with daycare and job and feed the kids, feed them, and oh my God, stress, she's going to love you for it.
Right. Well, So you're very knowledgeable on this. I'm sure you weren't born with all this knowledge. What journey did you have to go through to figure this all out?
What a great question. I grew up in the suburban sleepwalk.
Right.
And I had this yearning to do something more manly, but I really couldn't put my finger on it. I just didn't feel like it was all that prepared for manhood. I felt like a human. You know, my parents thought I was smart and should crack a book instead of playing sports. You know, we lived in, suburban Baltimore, Maryland. My dad was always like, oh yeah, being a mechanic or getting dirt under your fingernails, that's something you hire someone else to do.
Right.
But I didn't like it.
Right.
So I had job opportunities doing my first profession, my first, previous life. And one of them was in Florida, and one of them was in Yuma, Arizona, which is one of the hottest small towns in the country, in the middle of the Sonoran Desert. Looks like Wile E. Coyote, Clint Eastwood movie. If you've ever seen, the movie, that's where they had the Yuma Territorial Prison. That's where they sent the bad guys to rot in the heat all summer long.
Yeah.
I said, I'm in. I moved to Yuma. And for the next couple of years, I rode sport bike motorcycles 100
Holy
miles
shit.
an hour in the desert with all my Marine Corps buddies. And I'm like, I like this.
Yeah.
And I've never really looked back. And it's funny because I can go home for Thanksgiving and much of my family is still kind of doing the suburban sleepwalk.
Yeah.
And I'm the black sheep of the family, because I'm different. And I've gone to wrenching motorcycles and strapping helmets on my little kids and sending them out to scuff up their knee. And we go out RVing, and my wife and I take trips to North Korea for fun. And, we're weirdos now. We just decided we're going to go out and live. And I think, Austin, a lot of guys, what the suburban sleepwalk does, it doesn't only make you, it renders an idea in your mind, which I think is toxic. This is the real toxic idea.
Right.
That your masculinity no longer matters anymore. You can just get by being a humanoid.
Yeah. You can muddle through it.
Right. And then what happens as an end result is people have never felt that adrenaline rush associated with being alive.
Yeah.
They don't even know what an adventure feels like anymore. They just tune into TV and go, oh, look, there's someone doing something cool. Yeah,
so let's say I want to take back my manhood in 7 days. What should I do in those 7 days to get it back?
Woo! Actually, here's the thing. I have a program for guys called Invincible, which you can download to your iPod, and it gives you everything you need to know. As a matter of fact, Austin, I'll send it to you for free since you're hosting the show.
Thank you.
Other guys, I got a 50% coupon for you. And
where can our listeners find it?
How about if I send you to mountaintoppodcast.com/invincible? Okay, I'll do that for you.
mountaintoppodcast.com/invincible.
It'll cost you $47.50, which is less than you paid for your last bad date.
Oh yeah.
And it is a crash course in doing exactly what we talked about. And I'm not a drill sergeant. I'm not a hard guy. I'm very relatable. Remember, I've been there. I've done that. I've gone through this journey myself, kind of complete the thought about, did I already always have this going? Even after I moved away from Arizona, my first marriage was to a woman who suffered from some very serious psychoses, and I became codependent of that.
Right.
And I was a shell of myself after my first marriage was over. I mean, she made me believe I was a bad guy, even though everybody else said I did everything right. And that just makes you feel like a victim. Right. And that victimhood is going to really rob you of your masculinity because there's no personal power in victimhood.
Yeah, it's not empowering. It's disempowering.
Right. So part of being a man, this is a freebie, is taking ownership of what you can own, because that's the first step of being a provider and a protector is realizing I'm not powerless. And so I didn't want to be a victim anymore. So I said, I'm going to learn how to understand women, and I'm going to be, which, by the way, I put that to the test. I've done a pretty good job for a dude, according to women. Second of all, I'm going to do what I call deserving what I want. I'm going to be the kind of man those women are going to be attracted to. Not just like I have this entitlement where women should want me and I'm going to trick them into my bed. No, I learned to really love women again.
Yeah.
Because they're there to bolster and appreciate and celebrate my masculinity as long as I understand it and I get it right.
Right.
And that was transformational. And I've never looked back. And now I am married to quite literally a woman who is better than I could have designed her had I sent a job rec to God. Just my perfect honey for me.
Yeah.
And we have a blissful relationship. It's still hot. It's still wonderful. And our kids even like each other. And here's a hint for the guys. If you want cute kids who you actually like, first of all, work on your self-esteem. Marry a woman you connect with, because then you'll like each other. And then if she's hot, you'll have cute kids. You'll like them because they're, you like yourself. It's kind of a nice little formula.
Yeah, it is.
I make it sound easier than it is, I'm sure. But once you start getting all this firing on all cylinders, guys, if I can do it, so can you. I mean, it just starts, the pieces start falling into place, because this is how we're born to be. This is the design.
Right.
When the design's wrecked, because of natural entropy, that's one thing. But, it's like an airplane. It wants to fly.
Yeah.
You're a man. You want to be masculine.
Right.
You shouldn't be sitting on the tarmac.
Right. I love that. What's something that's true for you that almost no one else agrees with you on, that you haven't said already?
Oh, boy. You're wanting to stir the pot, aren't you?
Yeah.
No one else agrees with me.
It's true, but no one else agrees with you.
That no matter what the news says about the hot spots in the world,
yeah,
and the governments and what it's like over there, it's almost never as bad as the media makes it out to be.
Right.
And it's almost always actually kind of wonderful.
Yeah. The news only reports usually mostly negative things.
I have a video. I mentioned North Korea earlier. I have a video of my wife dancing in the park with the dearest, sweetest North Korean grandpa who twirls her around and just is glad to meet someone from the United States.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not going to pick up and move to North Korea.
Right.
Okay. But people are surprised they even let us in.
Yeah.
We got kicked out of a dinner party. They ended it early after we said circa 2010 that we went to a few majority Muslim countries in the Middle East, and we have never met nicer, more hospitable people in our entire life who loved kids. Oh. They're like, that's impossible. They're trying to kill us all, take over the world. So, no, they were very wonderful, nice people.
Yeah.
And, that was an affront to, being American, I guess.
Yeah. Right.
But that's, that was an interesting question. I love hard questions. That's the first thing that came to mind.
I love that. Yeah. That's great. That's wonderful. Who's one of your heroes?
Wow. My heroes. I'm a huge fan of Teddy Roosevelt.
Why?
Well, because I just think he cared. I think first of all, he had multiple life purposes. You can say that what he did in the Spanish-American War was misguided. That should never have happened. But here you have a guy who got shot very shortly before giving a political speech and held his chest together and gave the speech anyway.
Right.
He founded the national park system basically, and he just was very manly. Another guy I love is David Livingstone.
Who's he?
A British explorer who basically was the first Westerner to see much of Eastern Africa.
Oh, wow.
And the first thing you think about that is, he went there and ransacked the place.
Right.
Two very interesting things about Livingstone is, first, he was a connector. He would travel from one place to the next and say, hey, we just visited these guys over there, and they send you their greetings. They love you guys. They'd love to be friends. Right? And they're good. Right. Second of all, at that point in history, which was the mid-18th century, mid-19th century, there was a slave trade going on. The Americans and the British aren't the only people ever to own African slaves.
Right.
The Arab Peninsula was running a slave trade back and forth from East Africa. And David Livingstone was an abolitionist before being an abolitionist was cool or necessary.
Yeah.
It wasn't about a political, it wasn't to increase his Twitter followers.
What era did he live in?
Mid 1800s.
Okay. Got it. Yeah.
Yeah. So he knew he knew how to connect.
Right.
He very much respected life regardless of people's skin color.
Yeah.
And yet he was a flawed man. He wasn't known for being the most together leader. He wasn't known for having his ducks in a row and being really detail oriented. So you had to there were some hairy moments because he didn't plan. And but at the same time, what kind of adventure, how much adventure you have to have knowing that's a deficit and you're still going to go anyway.
Yeah.
And I just love that guy, you know?
Yeah.
And those are the kind of people I really like. You know, I think I admire some of the movies and movie stars and fictional characters too, and I can relate to a lot of them.
Give me one.
Well, if you guys haven't seen Ford versus Ferrari,
I haven't yet.
Oh boy, it's a great movie. I just want to jump in that movie and hang out with those guys. You know, I just want to be one of those guys. I was always a Steve McQueen fan.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of these people who are old school get in trouble with the cancel culture crowd, and perhaps understandably so.
Yeah, yeah.
But I always loved how John Wayne in his movies could be a hardened guy, but still have a heart.
Right.
You know, like if you ever see the original version of True Grit, you know, the little teenage gal drives him nuts, but she knows that he's actually got a soft heart under all that.
Right.
And I think you can be a good man. I don't think you have to be this macho jerk, selfish, destructive guy to be someone who knows how to protect, someone who knows how to restore order and preside over a situation. And those are the guys I've always loved. You know, a lot of times nowadays you see a lot of anti-hero stories, you know, where like Quentin Tarantino loves to do this, right? You know, you can't possibly root for anybody in Pulp Fiction. They're all horrible. Breaking Bad is an incredible television epic, but there's no one worth rooting for in an entire movie, an entire show, except Walter White's wife, and she's the one everybody can't stand.
Yeah, I mean, everyone hates her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She's the only decent person in the whole incredibly long, drawn-out, character-rich saga.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's a device that's used to keep us intrigued, and it's one that's used a lot nowadays. But you know, I love guys who mean it. I love guys who are trying.
Right.
Not to get all political, but I've become a fan of Dan Crenshaw.
Who is that?
The congressman from Texas, rather newly elected with the eye patch.
Oh, yeah, I've seen pictures of him.
I just think he knows how to maintain control even when he's just getting the hammer dropped on him. You know, even vis-a-vis whatever antics the president of the United States make it hard for him to be in the same party with. Dan Crenshaw, he's a former Navy SEAL, and those guys are just even. And they're sponges for information. That's what I love about them.
Yeah.
That's why those guys come to me. They're like, okay, you know how to leverage masculinity or whatever you want to call it to make women love you, how to have relationships. I'm here to learn.
Right.
You know, it's like, I don't need you to be a Navy SEAL. I'm already one.
Right.
You know, you're not going to be a Navy SEAL. Forget about it. But I'm going to take everything you got home with me.
Right.
And I'm like, when I figured out that's what they do,
I
was like, oh, that's why these guys are so unbelievably easy to coach, because they understand
they have a clear objective.
Information.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I love it. I just love it. I mean, Jocko Willink is a supporter of our show with Origin
Jocko.
Maine. Origin Maine is a sponsor of the Mountaintop podcast. And I was so honored when they say they resonated with the message in terms of getting better with women that our show had, because they were looking for a show like that.
That's incredible.
And I just think Jocko is really good at being more macho and manly than any of us could ever hold a candle to, while still being down to earth and being a real dude.
Right. Yeah. I
respect. Love it.
The first encounter I ever had with him was his book. And I remember
Extreme Ownership. Yeah.
Yeah. I listened to it on audio when I was in Seattle, and it changed my life. I was like, oh my God, this is how I need to live my life. This is incredible.
You know, less people think I'm really politically bent, and I'm really kind of a centrist. I love thinking for myself, because I think that's a masculine thing to do, not be a sheep. I think powerless victims tend to be the first to fall right into line with whatever they're told to believe, and I don't think men do that.
Right.
I love Greg Popovich, the coach of the Spurs, because he's an incredibly talented coach, and he's over himself. He doesn't need your accolades. He's got a wry sense of humor. He doesn't care what people think of him, although he's doing his best to be the right guy. He will tell you what he thinks, even if it's unpopular. And he built a team full of people like him. Yeah. You know, you look at Tim Duncan, he was Mr. Fundamental, one of the greatest players of all time, no ego. Manu Ginobili, great, incredible, high energy player, completely different player than Tim Duncan, but a great down to earth dude. And every time you get players on that team, they're guys who are over themselves.
Yeah.
And I love this idea of excelling and being the very best at what you can be, not because you want to beat your chest and say, hey, look at me.
Right.
Feel disrespected if someone doesn't give you props or whatever, but just because that's your purpose.
Yeah,
that's what you're here to do, and you're going to be the best at it, and who cares what the Lakers fans think? I love it. Love that stuff.
Yeah, that's one thing I'm trying to get better at is, I have this, my self-esteem is very high, to put it that way, but I also
look like a guy who's confident.
Thank you. But I also want to remain very humble. Humility is, I don't know, I think it's one of the most respectable traits of people is humility, especially people.
Say thank you a lot. Apologize when you're wrong. Don't blame other people. Talk about ideas, not other people. If they're assholes, if they're problematic, just distance yourself. Don't get drawn into that fray. That's something even Jocko talks a lot about.
Really?
Yeah. Well, he has a story he told on one of his shows where, the question came up, what do you do when you're Jocko Willink and some sniveling little butt wipe butts in front of you in line? And he goes, nothing. He goes, nothing? You're not going to grab his ass by the shoulder and hurl him to the back of the line like a monster? No.
Yeah.
That's not a hill I'm going to die on, because it's not going to teach him anything. Until he decides to change on his own, he's going to get his just desserts in life by being a butt wipe. Right. And I don't want to make a scene. It's not worth it. I have nothing to prove to that guy.
I got a question for you.
That was amazing.
No, I love that. I love that. That brings up something. I remember I was listening to another dating coach, and I want to get your opinion on this. He was at the gym, and some other dude was on the equipment, and there was like the gym was packed, right? And so the dating coach walks up to him and says, "Hey, man, while you're resting," the guy was just sitting there. He goes, "While you're resting, is it okay if I hop on a set with you?" And the guy goes, "No." And the dating coach is like, "Yeah, usually I just leave it alone because, I do me." But then he stopped, and then he looked at the guy and was like, "Hey, man, that's really not cool." And then the dating coach went on to explain why he said that. He's like, "I could have just gone on and gone my separate way and never thought about it again. But then he thought, I might be doing this guy a disservice by not letting him know that what he's doing isn't cool." What are your thoughts on that? Do you think he was in the green and the yellow?
I think that's a cop-out.
Yeah, really?
That guy's not going to learn anything. He knows exactly what kind of asshole he is.
Okay.
I solved the problem by going at 6 a.m. when no one's there.
Yeah, right, exactly.
The gym is not a place to prove your testosterone.
Right.
It's just, that's what a bunch of immature little young bulls on the hill do with each other.
Of course.
If you've heard the story about the young bull on the hill and the old bull on the hill and the young bull on the hill, they're looking at a bunch of a valley full of cows.
Right.
And the young bull goes, "Oh, let's run down there and get one." And the old bull goes, "Let's walk down there and get them all." Right. It's funny because you don't appear to be very old. You would be MTV's definition of someone who appears to be younger than 25.
Thanks.
I get guys your age and younger come to me all the time. I've had guys not understand why that's a funny joke.
Really?
What's the point of that joke? I don't get it. Why can't you just run or walk and get one or get all? I don't get it. But of course, anyone who knows anything about how you succeed wildly in life, be it with women or anything, understands why that's such an incredibly fun and powerful joke, actually.
Right. Yeah.
But I mean, I think if you've got, all these young guys in the NBA, I feel disrespected. Guess what? When you're doing something worthwhile and when you start getting notoriety because of it, someone's going to disagree with you and someone's not going to like it, or else you're doing it wrong.
Agreed.
When you try to please everybody, you'll please nobody.
Right.
And if for some reason you are pleasing everybody, something's awry. You're not focused enough.
Right.
You're not risking enough. So, if the guy's going to be an asswipe about, I'm going to stay on this thing and sweat all over it, and you can go, all good.
Right.
If you don't like it, you don't like people like that, then come at a different time, buy your own home stuff, make enough money where you can build a room under your house into a home gym.
Right.
Now, lest I sound like I'm a total pacifist, I've had at least twice during the tenure of my marriage where I've had to risk my life to stand up for my woman's honor.
Oh, wow.
That mattered.
Right. Yeah.
And there have been times, and I thought one time that guy was going to kill me.
Yeah.
I thought he was probably armed and was going to kill me, but I wasn't going to let him be rude to my wife.
Right.
And he was one of these guys with a mullet and like a tattoo that looked like it'd been drawn by a drunk buddy at 3 in the morning. And those guys are, those guys are completely unpredictable.
Yeah.
They don't care.
Right.
And I've also had times where my wife, maybe her and a BFF were at a restaurant and they were disrespected by a male manager.
Yeah.
And I went back and had words with the manager.
Yeah.
And it's funny how those guys are twice my size and they always back down, because people who do that by definition are pussies.
Right.
Anybody who thinks they have to show their strength vis-a-vis women or children or someone smaller than them, it's kind of like that scene in Tombstone.
Which one?
Where no one goes to the bar anymore because this big guy slap around people and calling them names when he's dealing the cards, and and Wyatt Earp just goes in there and gets up and slaps him in the face and slaps him again, and the big guy goes off whimpering. Yeah, that's about right.
Right. Yeah.
Real men don't have anything to prove. Mm-hmm. Another thing that goes along with this, I love where this conversation's going.
Yeah.
A lot of times guys will feel provoked by women.
Yeah.
Like the women will call them names, or the women will start something. The guys feel like, and other guys are around. They're like, I've got to shout this woman down or show some power over her, or I'm not going to be a man. The opposite's true.
Yeah.
You walk away from any woman who's in a power struggle with you. You don't even engage it, because you cannot look more manly by powerfully subduing a woman.
Right.
It can't happen. Now, notwithstanding, John Wayne spanking his girlfriend in McClintock and stuff like that, that's a theatrical device.
Right.
Not in the real world.
Right.
You walk away from it. And if someone calls you names, they're just trying to provoke you.
Yeah.
And don't be provoked, because there's nothing manly about beating up a woman or getting one up even in a verbal argument by shouting her down. That's not a high quality woman who would try to put a man in that.
Right. Right. You just brought up something that reminded me, as far as fictional devices go, characters are written, they're supposed to represent something. Who do you think is the ideal man in fiction? Who is like the ideal man that people should aspire to have traits of?
Oh, wow. Is that an incredibly broad? I mean, because you wrote fiction, and I dare not say Jesus Christ.
Right. Right. Fine.
Ideal
Fictional character from the past 100 years.
From the past 100 years. I'm more drawn to the idea of, instead of fictional characters, because I am kind of drawing a blank.
Yeah.
Because I'm not sure ideal men play well in fiction. Han Solo is damn cool, but he's not ideal. Right. Anyone who's gone on the hero's journey, a la Joseph Campbell in any of these movies, goes through a period where they're messed up, and the flaws are what make the story interesting.
Yeah. Right.
I would say, in terms of understanding how to communicate with women and attract them, Hank Moody, David Duchovny's character in Californication is just a wizard. Okay.
Right.
Sean Connery's James Bond is damn cool. But, if you're capping people in the head and killing them, I'm not sure if that's a perfect representation.
Right. Even if they are bad guys.
Right. And you have your Rocky Balboas of the world who overcome things, but, they're flawed men, which is what makes them more interesting.
Right.
But, something along those lines.
Yeah.
A lot of times the fictional characters are based on either a stock character in Hollywood or something archetypal within us, and something we want to aspire to, or something we've seen before and can relate to.
Yeah.
So when you get an old Western movie like The Good, Bad, and the Ugly, and you contrast Eli Wallach's character Tuco with Clint Eastwood's character, the man with no name, and they're polar opposites. But Eli Wallach is the reason why, along with the music probably, is why that movie is so more vastly popular than the two movies that came before it.
Right. Fistful of dollars.
A few dollars more. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Most people say, the sequel is always worse than the original. That's the third one.
Yeah, it's the third one. It's the most remembered. No one really remembers the first two.
They're both very good. Okay.
Yeah.
And Lee Van Cleef's in them, the Angel Eyes guy. He's a great actor too, very underrated. But I mean, Eli Wallach as Tuco steals the show. And he's a scatterbrain. He's awful.
Yeah.
But I think we all know someone like that. And it makes the show. Meanwhile, Clint Eastwood is so quiet, you don't want to be like him. I mean, can you imagine, Clint Eastwood's character in those movies on a date with a chick? It wouldn't go well.
Talking, smoking a cigar.
She's going to okay, I guess there's not going to be a second date. Bye, I mean, there are characters I love and think are wonderful. Like I love Kenny freaking Powers on Eastbound and Down, Danny McBride.
Yeah.
I still love it, but I don't want to be that guy.
Oh yeah.
And one of my favorite movies is Cool Hand Luke, because I just love, Paul Newman. And he's so cool in that movie. He's just the coolest dude, but he's a criminal and he ends up paying richly for it. So, I mean, it's as if you can draw certain characteristics about people.
Right.
I would love Steve McQueen's integrity in Bullet. And I would argue that Paul McQueen, dare I say, is probably cooler than Steve McQueen in Bullet, even though McQueen's the king of cool.
Yeah.
But, there you go. I think, if you take a composite, like I would like to have this guy's
take slices of all your favorite traits.
Right. Yeah, right. That's composites are the way to go there. Because I'm not sure that there's ever really been. I mean, you can give me some examples of your own, because I'm sure this is a question you've thought about. But I mean, it just seems like in fiction, it's a lot more interesting when the characters are fundamentally imperfect.
Oh, of course, absolutely, yeah.
Right.
Well, we're actually almost out of time for the public interview. So before we end this, where can more people find out about you?
Well, I've created a special page for people, so whether you're a reader or a listener, okay, you can choose your poison, and I'll give you something really valuable for free. If you're a reader, I'll give you my first book, Deserve What You Want, which was $37, but I'm giving it to you for free. You can get both of them if you want. Or if you're a listener, I invite you to subscribe to my podcast. It's very popular on iTunes, called The Mountaintop, where we talk about being a better man, getting better women in your life. And we talk about some of the same themes that we talked about today, but indeed a whole lot more than that. And all that's there for you at scottmckay.net. That's all you have to remember. It's one T in Scott, SCOTMCKAY. People ask me if that's my real name or a pen name, and I go, well, look, if it was my pen name, would I have spelled it wrong?
Yeah. Love that.
That's actually what's on my driver's license.
Really?
SCOTMCKAY. Yep.
That's funny.
And whether you're a reader or a listener, get on board. Get both. Join us you guys are podcast listeners. Join the Mountaintop Podcast. Grab a few recent episodes with topics that interest you and give it a couple times to get in the flow of it. I think you guys will really like it.
Awesome, man. Thank you. And I'll put those links in the show notes for you guys.
Cheers. Be good.
Cheers, man. Thank you.
Want to see what the top experts have to say behind the scenes? Just go to modernbiotechradio.com and you'll get instant access to every behind-the-scenes interview for free. Now, these interviews are not for the public, so please don't share. But if you'd like to pull back the curtain with me and learn what secrets they reveal, just go to modernbiotechradio.com and get instant access to these interviews for free. Again, that's modernbiotechradio.com. If you'd like to learn the best kept secrets that they can't share publicly but allowed me to share in private, just go to modernbiotechradio.com and get instant access to all of these interviews completely free. I'll see you there.